Okay, before I call this case, I just want to make sure that everybody we're anticipating on the call has had a chance to log in. Ms. Winters, for Department of Lands, do you have everyone that you anticipate on this call?
Good morning, yes.
Wonderful. And then for Valiant or the Idaho Club in North Lake, do we have everyone we anticipate being on this call, Mr. Haberman?
Yes.
All right, and for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Mr. Joyner, I'm sorry if you have a different title.
Yeah,
I
believe everybody's here, ma'am.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, this is the matter of the application for a permit for Community Marina, the Idaho Club North Lake PUD Marina, Valiant Idaho LLC. This is the time and place for our pre-hearing conference. I am the assigned hearing officer, Leslie Hayes. We are recording this conference via Zoom and will be made available to any party upon their request. I have taken appearances for a few people as we are getting started here this morning, but I will ask Ms. Winters to introduce everyone that is here on behalf of Department of Lands.
Good morning. Myself, JJ Winters, Deputy Attorney General, represent the Idaho Department of Lands. And I have with me Mr. Mike Amer from the Idaho Department of Lands.
Okay, and then for the Idaho Club North Lake, Mr. Haberman, will you introduce everyone that's here on your behalf?
Yeah, I'm William Haberman. I'm the principal managing member of Valiant Idaho, manager of Valiant Idaho 2. And we have Scott Brown with us as well from J.A. Sewell, who's our civil engineer.
Okay, and then Mr. Joyner, on behalf of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, will you introduce your folks?
Myself, James Joyner. We have Kelly Urbanik, Michaela Murdoch, and Garrett Schock.
Okay, and then I also see a Rachel King on the call. I believe she's with the Department of Lands. Is that correct, Ms. Winters?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Rachel King, is she with Lands?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are scheduled to convene this hearing on September 6th at 5 p.m. at Sandpoint High School. I assume that date and time still works for everybody, but I will confirm that now. Ms. Winters, does that still work for you?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Haberman, does that still work for you?
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Joyner?
Yes.
Okay, and then we are scheduled to be in person. We will be recording this via Zoom. The way that I have set it up is we will have a podium at the front of the room and chairs or bleachers in we're going to be, I believe, in the gymnasium in the back of the room for the public to testify. I will have individuals that want to make comment after the presentation of evidence come to the podium so that the recording can be picked up on my laptop computer. I'm not familiar with the technology in the cafeteria up there, so I think that's probably the safest bet to ensure that we have a clean, good recording of everyone's presentation of evidence and the public comments for the director as he is reviewing my recommendation for purposes of issuing a final order. We will have a court reporter present as well. Does anybody anticipate ordering a transcript of these proceedings?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Winters?
Not unless one is needed.
Okay, and then so Mr. Haberman, the cost of the transcript will be borne by you if ordered. We have had parties in the past at the completion of the hearing decide not to order the transcript and instead to rely on the Zoom recording that I make. So you can make that confirmation at the conclusion of the proceedings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other logistical details before I move to pre-hearing statements and exhibits? All right, seeing none, I will move to that. I have in my file for Valiant a list of 3 potential witnesses and 3 exhibits. Is that everything, Mr. Haberman, or is something missing from my file?
That's everything.
Okay, and then for the Department of Lands, I have 1 witness and 7 exhibits. Is anything missing from my file, Ms. Winters?
No.
Okay, and then I have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers submitting nothing on these proceedings, just continuing to be a listening bystander. Is that correct, Mr. Joyner?
That's correct.
Wonderful. I usually ask at the beginning at these pre-hearing conferences, are there any preliminary objections that we need to take up to any of the parties' proposed exhibits? Or can we get a generalized stipulation that they will be admitted and considered as part of these proceedings? I will start with you, Ms. Winters.
We don't have any objection to any other parties' exhibits. I did have a question about the public comments that were submitted.
Yes, what is your question about those?
Does the hearing officer have those part of the record?
Yes, I have comments. Let me see. I have to figure out which direction my mouse travels to get to the next screen. There it is. I have comments. I have looks like comments 1 pages, not total number of comments, 1 through page 1,279, with an additional 63 comments that were picked up today and will be circulated. Does that sound about right, Ms. Winters?
It does. Would the hearing officer object to any kind of summary data sort of these? I've been reviewing these comments. It seems a lot of them may be bot generated or from the same person with different advocacy groups. A majority of them are from share an email address with about 10 different advocacy groups. And to what degree the hearing officer gives those any weight? Would submitting some exhibit like that be okay with the hearing officer?
Yeah, I can see that being of benefit. Any objection to kind of a summary of the exhibits, Mr. Haberman?
No, none at all. I would just note, I have not yet seen, I don't believe I've been copied on, or those have been shared with me, those comments. So I would like to get a copy of those if I could.
They should be in the mail to you. I think they went out middle to late last week. But I'll double check that, and that those went out on a thumb drive over to you.
I could share them in a OneDrive folder.
That would be great, Ms. Winters.
Yeah, I would prefer a digital option in case it was sent to an address that I'm not at.
Okay. It looks like you guys are going to be coordinating that, so I will have, when you get the exhibits, this next batch, Ms. Winters, Bates stamped, please also include those in a OneDrive.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I do intend as it relates, oh, Mr. Haberman, I forgot to ask you, any objection to IDL's proposed exhibits? Do you generally stipulate to their admission and use in these proceedings?
I'm happy to stipulate to them, but I don't believe I've seen those either.
Okay, I'll take that up at the beginning of the hearing. Ms. Winters, will you get those over to Mr. Haberman?
Yes, which email would you prefer, Mr.
The
Haber?
best would be William.Haberman@me.com. @me.com.
Do that this morning.
Okay, and I'll have you have an opportunity to review those prior to having to stipulate to their admission. I will ask that the parties attempt to be there about 4:30 so that we can resolve any preliminary matters before the start of the hearing. Do you have any issue with that, Ms. Winters?
No.
Mr. Haberman, does that work for your schedule?
Yes.
Okay. And then the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is welcome to be present for those preliminary matters, but is not required to. It just depends if you want to be involved in any exhibit fights between Department of Lands and Valiant. Okay. Do we anticipate any of the proposed witnesses needing to testify via Zoom, or are they all going to be in person, Ms. Winters?
In person.
Okay, Mr. Haberman?
In person.
Okay, that makes things easier on our end of things, so I appreciate that. And then,
I have a quick question.
yes,
The three that are listed, we may not end up calling all three. I guess is that okay?
that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
The only issue that it might raise is that Ms. Winters has a specific question for a specific witness. We may call that witness for a limited purpose, but you are in control of your case and are not required to call anybody that you do not intend to be part of the presentation of evidence.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then order of presentation, these public hearings I know operate a little bit different than the two-party disputes and the contested cases. So my inclination would be to have Department of Lands present their opening position, usually through Mr. Amer as the only named witness, which will be a summary of his pre-hearing statement and recommendation. And then have Mr. Haberman present his witnesses and his position statement, and that will be considered the evidentiary portion of the proceedings. We will then open it up to public comment. The public will not be permitted to submit any sort of documentary evidence, but they will be permitted to provide comment. A summary of the comments would be helpful to me in coordinating that, because I would like to reduce duplication of comments. I know everybody needs a voice in these proceedings, but we do have a 4-hour limit, and in the interest of time, if they've submitted written comments, I have read those written comments and I've taken them in consideration in these proceedings. So really that's my intent in these proceedings. Ms. Winters, do you have any additional thoughts or ideas about how we can proceed? Or is that generally what you were thinking as well?
That's where I was going. I spent some time sorting through these, the 1,200 pages, and gotten a pretty good handle on the data as to where it's coming from and which are the same.
Okay.
The same format. There are some legitimate individual comments that didn't come through one of these advocacy organizations. But the ones that came from the advocacy organizations appear to be the same boilerplate, couple of paragraphs. And some of them, if sorted by name, submitted duplicates from different platforms. So
Okay, and then Mr. Haberman, does that order of proceedings sound appropriate to you?
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay, and then just being familiar with Mr. Amer and reading through his pre-hearing statement, is 30 minutes sufficient to present Department of Land's case, Ms. Winters?
yes,
Okay, Mr. Haberman, do you believe that 30 minutes would be an appropriate amount of time?
Yes.
Okay. Would either party like an opportunity to present a closing statement verbally at the end of the hearing? Ms. Winters?
I'll leave that to hearing officer's discretion, and the other parties were fine with submitting written closing or oral.
Okay, Mr. Haberman, at this point, do you have a preference? I know we're holding the hearing in advance of the deadline for the close of these proceedings, which let me double check what that is. I thought it was the 11th. Oh, it's the 22nd, so there's sufficient time for us to hold the evidentiary portion of the hearing open for there to be written closings. I know that you had some concerns about public comments coming in after the close of the proceedings and an ability to address those. So would you prefer that we do written closings at
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do written closings. I will close public comment 5 days before those are due. Is that sufficient time for you, Mr. Haberman, to put something together?
Yes.
Okay, so I will close public comment on September 15th. And IDL staff has asked for a couple of days to process and get those over, so we will distribute no later than September 19th. The remaining comments with closings due on the 22nd. And then my decision will be due, my recommended order will be due with enough time for the director to issue a final order no later than October 22nd. So I will set an internal deadline for my recommended order to give a week or more for the director to consider that recommendation. So those are the timelines we're looking at.
Just to confirm, I'm sorry, does October 22nd is when we would expect the final decision from the director?
Yeah, let me double check that. Sometimes my 30 days in my head isn't what it actually is. Yeah, so 30 days is exactly from September 22nd to October 22nd. So that
Right.
would be the statutory deadline for him to issue his decision.
Thank you.
Okay, that is all I had on my list to address today. Ms. Winters, did you have anything else you'd like to cover in advance of the proceedings?
No, thank you, hearing officer.
Okay, Mr. Haberman, anything else you'd like to address?
No, thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Joyner from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, anything that remains unaddressed?
No, thank you.
Okay, well then we will be in recess and I will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.